students, welcome to Knowledge of Physics. In this video, I will show you the best possible way to write answer to the question in SEE exam in case of science. Okay, I will demonstrate the possible way with an example, and here is an example of question which was asked in first term examination. The question was taken from PABSON, and the question says, what do you mean by scientific learning? In an experiment to determine the role of sunlight for the growth of plants, identify independent variable, dependent variable, and control variable. Okay, PABSON first term 2080. Okay, so to know the best possible way of writing answers to this question, there are a few points to be remembered. We will starting to write the answer of such type of question. This is a long answer question. Okay, first, number one, read full question carefully. Okay, before writing answer to the question in your answer sheet, you have to read the question carefully, what the question trying to get the answer. Okay, so first number says read full question carefully and then try to understand what an answer the question is trying to get. Okay, after reading the question, you have to understand what answer the question is trying to get, what answer you should provide to the question. Okay, and number three, collect some ideas in your mind. Okay, after you understand what type of answer you should give to the question or you should write to the question, you have to collect some ideas from where you start to writing and from where you conclude your answer. Okay, you have to think about it in your mind. And in number four, if there are more than one questions in same question, okay, then give few seconds to think how you are answering them. Okay, for example, this question was in number 17, and there are two questions. Okay, what do you mean by scientific learning? And second part of the question is, in an experiment to determine the role of sunlight for the growth of plants, identify independent, dependent, and control variable. So there are two parts of question. Okay, so to write the answer of this question, you have to think about the answer, how you are going to write the answer. Okay, in number 5, start writing answers by separating parts of each question with shared handwriting. Okay, in such type of question where there are two parts, you have to separate the parts. For example, this is the first part and this one is second part. Okay, you have to separate the answer for these questions as well. In this video I will show you how you can separate the parts of the question and write the answer for each part. Okay, so and next thing you should be careful is you have to write fair handwriting, clear, neat and clean in general. Okay, so keep in mind these 5 points before writing answers to the question in exam. Okay, now let's get started to writing the question of this writing the answer of this question. Okay, so first of all, the first part is scientific learning. In first pass, you are asked to write about scientific learning, okay, or meaning of scientific learning. Okay, so in first part I have written meaning of scientific learning. Okay, the meaning of scientific learning it goes like this: the process of getting knowledge or information on a specific topic in a systematic way is called scientific learning. Okay, and in other words, scientific learning is the method to develop an understanding of the natural as well as physical world that is based on truth and supported by evidences. Scientific learning involves various steps such as identifying problem, and number 2, performing background learning or collecting additional information on the topic from various sources like textbook, research reports, etc. Number 3, guessing the possible answer, or you can say formation of a hypothesis. In number 4, collecting and setting up the required materials for experiment. Okay, and in number 5, perform experiment and collect data or information to test the correctness of guessed answer. Okay, you have guessed answer in this step. Okay, and in 5th step you have to perform experiment to collect data and information to test the correctness of the answer you guessed here. Okay. In number 6, step 6, analyze whether guessed answer is correct or not by comparing results got from experiment. Okay, you have already guessed answer in 3rd step, and you get another answer from this from analyzing the answer you get from this step, 5th step after experiment, and you have to compare these two answers, or you have to compare these two answers you got from these two steps, and if the answers you guessed and the result you got from the experiment appears to be nearly equal, then obviously the answer you guessed in 3rd step is valid, or it is valid by the experimental value. Okay, and then you draw a conclusion, and after that you prepare a report to share your outcome with others. Okay, this in scientific learning you can write this much of the definition or meaning. Okay, and in exam while I was after exam while I was checking your answer sheets, most of the students just wrote about definitions, short definition of this topic. Actually, writing only short definition is not enough for the meaning of scientific learning. Okay, you have to write or elaborate a bit more. Okay, like this. Okay, keep in mind for next time. Okay, now for second part. In second part, you have to separate independent variable, dependent variable, and control variable in the experiment of the role of sunlight for the growth of plants. Okay, for this I have a hint here for you. Okay, separate the part like this. First, this was first part. Okay, and this is second part. Okay, and hint is gives a definition of variable, independent variable, dependent variable, control variable as follows, taking the support from given experiment name. Okay, first of all, you have to write about what is variable, and after writing about the variable, you can say, or you can write, there are 3 types of variable, that is independent, dependent, and control variable. And from given experiment, you can separate, or you can identify the which is a dependent variable, which is independent variable, and which is control variable. You can give the example from the given experiment. Okay, so how the answer goes let's see here. First of all, the measurable quantity that takes various values based on given condition or criteria is called variable. Okay, this is the definition of variable. Okay, and there are mainly 3 types of variable. They are discussed as follows. Okay, after you write a short definition of variable, it shows what is variable. Okay, it also shows that you have some idea about the variable and their types. Okay, so you must include such type of short definition. And the first type of variable is independent, second type is dependent, and third type is control variable. We will go there later. Okay, first of all, let's discuss about independent variable. Okay, the variable whose values are changed by the researchers to study its effect in values of other variable is called independent variable. See, the variable whose values are changed by the researcher, or if you are the researcher, then the value of the variable is changed by you, okay, or researcher, to study the effects, of changing values of this independent variable to other variable. Okay, and that type of variable is called independent variable. It is also be defined as the variable whose values does not depend on values of other variable is called independent variable. In other words, you can also say define independent variable as those variable whose value does not depend on the values of other variables or other physical quantities. Those variables are called independent variable. Okay, in given experiment of role of sunlight on growth of plants, Since sunlight does not depend on height of plants and its values are varied by researcher according to time of the day, the sunlight is supposed to be independent variable. Okay, this is the example taken from given example, given question or given experiment, you can say. Okay, sunlight is the independent variable because it does not depend on height of the plants, and by varying the height of plants you cannot see the effect of growth of the or height of the plant on value of sunlight. Okay, instead of that you can study the height growth effect of sunlight on height of or growth of plants. Okay, so sunlight is independent variable in this case or in this experiment. Now let's move on to dependent variable. The variable whose values needs to be determined according to the values of independent variable is called dependent variable. See, and this means that the variable whose value depends on values of other variable is called dependent variable. You can write any of these two sentences to define dependent variable. You have to give a short and sweet introduction to the variable. What is that? Okay, so for example, from the given experiment, the growth of plants or height of plants in given experiment is dependent variable because because sunlight is important in photosynthesis or food making process of plants, and the more plants get sunlight, the faster it grows. Okay, you know, the photosynthesis process is a very important process to growth of plants. Okay, and sunlight is the first factor that photosynthesis process needs. Okay, so here height of the plant or growth of the plant is dependent variable which depends on sunlight. Okay, now let's move on to next variable, that is control variable. The variable whose value is kept fixed or constant throughout the experiment is called control variable. Few variables in an experiment need to be controlled, otherwise it may affect the outcome of the study. For example, amount of water supplied to the plant. Okay, first of all let me explain in brief. In any experiment, those variable whose values are kept constant or kept fixed, those variables are called control variable. Actually these variables are not variable, they are constant terms or constant factor. Okay, they may vary in other experiment or their value may be different in other experiment, but in a particular or specific experiment their value should be kept constant or their values should be controlled. That's why they are called control variables. Okay, for example, in the experiment of role of sunlight on growth of plants, amount of water supplied to the plant, type of soil on which plant grow, and kind of plant, year, etc. can be considered as control variables. It is because to study effect of sunlight on growth of plants, these variables should remain same. It means they should be provided in a same quantity every time. Okay, here what I am trying to say is you are studying effect of sunlight on growth of plant, so there are already two variables. Okay, one is independent and another one is dependent. Okay, you are going to study effect of independent variable on dependent variable or effect of sunlight on growth of plant. Okay, so if you vary other values of other variable as well, then it is very difficult to study effect of sunlight on growth of plant easily. Okay, there may be some complexity, okay, due to which you cannot get the desired result. Okay, that's why here in this case the amount of water supplied to the plant and type of the soil on which the plant grow and kind of plant, air, etc. must be controlled or it must be same during the experiment. Okay, that's why these variables are considered as control variable. Their values are controlled during the experiment. Okay, so in this way you can write the answer of this question by separating it in different parts. There are two parts of question, so I showed you to write the answers of these questions in separate parts. Okay, now after writing all these about the all these answers of different parts of the question, at last you have to include their conclusion of the answer. Okay, so in this case I have concluded the answer like this: the method of study to develop an understanding of natural as well as physical phenomena happening around us is called scientific learning. Okay, in given experiment of study of effect of sunlight in growth of plants, sunlight represents independent variable, growth of plants represent dependent variable. Besides, amount of water, type of soil, kind of plant, year, etc. are control variable. Okay, at last you have to conclude your answer by writing the summary or short form of your answer like this, so that the examiner also notice the understanding of your understanding of the question. Okay, so in this way you can write the answer of the such type of question in SEE exam as well as in term exams. Okay, so keep in mind in next time whatever you have done or whatever answer you have written in previous exams. Okay, but for the exam in futures you have to consider these points. Thank you so much for watching. See you in next video.